Now this is more like it. The E75 is an absolute monster. In my opinion, easily the best balanced tank at tier 9. The thing about the E75 is it is always a contender, it is always a threat, but you can't say it's overpowered in any respect. This tank is widely considered to be the highlight of the E100 line, and it is not hard to see why. The armor on this tank is phenomenal, the stopping power. This thing can anchor a line like nobody's business. Easily capable of weathering a storm and wearing down large numbers of enemy tanks. The durability upgrade of the Tiger II over the Tiger I is repeated in the E75. But it's not just an upgrade the way that the Tiger II is over the Tiger I. The dynamics of play for the E75 change a bit more drastically. No longer restricted to a series of defensive actions, the E75 is a very capable brawler and can play an extremely aggressive role, forcing action and leading an assault over open ground in a way that the Tiger II never could, through a combination of the much better armor per tier, and of course the upgrade in speed. The E100 can crank along at 40 km per hour, as you can see here. And you'll note it's not just the raw speed of this thing. Pay attention to the mobility in terms of vehicle rotation. This thing can turn on a dime. The changes to its mobility came in with patch 8.8 along with the rest of the retooling of the German line, and it took me by surprise when it happened. The E75 used to turn like a goddamn ocean liner, but when the changes came through, the ground resistances got better, and this thing, it can rotate so quickly you can practically pirouette like a goddamn ballerina. Which became a bit of a problem when enemies would shoot you in the track while you're travelling at full speed, and all of a sudden, because this thing can turn so fast, you would find that your tank gets flipped around on its side. By which I mean, of course, that this thing would spin around to expose the flat side armor to the enemy, giving them easy pins into your ammo rack. So that's a good start to the discussion on the strong points of the E75. It's got the same armor layout that the Tiger II had, in the way that the tank is configured, but it just upgrades the armor to a much more impressive degree, to a way that really does handle in tier and above tier much better than the Tiger II does. It's far more mobile than the Tiger II in every sense conceivable, and is in fact a very mobile heavy tank all across the board. A fact that contributes to its changed role from the more defensive anchor that the Tiger II is to an actual genuine brawling heavy tank. Because of its better armor, because of its better mobility, its ability to shift, to change direction, to change facing, and the extra weight the E75 can throw around, this tank is capable of stomping a mudhole in enemies in the open field, face to face, up close and personal, just really ramming it out. Just aggressively manhandling enemy tanks, pushing them back, throwing them off, damaging them with rams, tracking them to hold them in place. It's why I nicknamed the E75 the bully tank, a name which has kind of stuck with the folks that I platoon with. Because that's really the way it plays. Up close, brutal, shoving people around, and making itself felt. So we know it's a tough hombre, and it can push people around. But the other strong points that I haven't really hit on yet is the gun, in certain respects. The E75 packs a 128mm cannon that you also find on the tier 8 German tank destroyers, like the Ferdinand here, with that characteristic high penetration and the brutal 490 alpha damage. This gun packs one hell of a wallop. So in many respects, the gun is a strong point of the tank, but it is also its most drastic weakness, because the price you have to pay for that fantastic penetration and brutal alpha damage is an incredibly low rate of fire. You are only going to get to pull the trigger on this thing 4 times a minute. And if you get hit in the ammo rack or lose your loader, it's just tortuous. It takes so long to reload this gun once one of those are knocked out. And the tragic part is the flat part of your turret front. If that gets pinned, it's really ridiculously easy to knock out your loader or do some ammo rack damage. And the side armor underneath the turret, it's really flat. If the enemy ever catches its side on, you're going to take ammo rack damage really easily. And this limitation, as much as its strong points, really dictates what the E75 has to do. And it is in fact the reason why I have chosen this incredibly mediocre replay to show you. The E75, it does not have the rate of fire to shoot its way out of trouble. You cannot engage multiple opponents all around you and put them down quickly enough, so what you have to do is find ways to make it a slow grind out process where you can just wear them down, trusting in your armor to give you the time to take them out. So that's what I've done this game. I took an initial early spot on the causeway at F0, put myself in a position where the enemy is all to my front but mostly at arm's length. I was up front and exposed enough to attract enemy fire so that they could bounce shots off my toughest armor, but in sufficient cover to cover up my weak spots so that they were extremely unlikely to damage me. And in this way I helped my team, as every shot that the enemy throws fruitlessly at my frontal plate is one less shot damaging an ally, giving them the space to act and deal with the targets that I can't kill off fast enough. And all the while I always had a target close enough for me to shoot when the gun reloaded, so 4 times a minute I can plug 490 damage fairly reliably into the closest enemy target, with a damn good chance of punching through even the toughest armor that they present to me. And it's allowed me to really dominate the game. I've taken almost no damage and dealt out 3,444 on the clock so far, and there will be more added to that shortly. And all this on one of the most open maps in the game, with minimal opportunities to side-scrape or find solid cover to hide behind for a fairly long reload cycle. This open, long-ranged map is not the natural habitat of an E75, and yet it's just that damn good that it can persevere all the same and still have a massive impact on the game. As I said, the best balanced tank in Tier 9. You take it out of its comfort zone, plonk it down somewhere where it doesn't really belong, and it's just that good that it can still perform. It takes the reliability of German engineering to a whole new level. Whatever the circumstance, the E75 gets the job done. And that job is the primary heavy tank. It is the point man. It leads the charge. It takes the fight to the enemy. You go to where the action is going to be thickest, and you make sure you occupy the enemy's full attention. You have a gun that punches so hard that you cannot be ignored. You have the durability to shrug off all but the deadliest of opposition, and you have the raw power and raw physicality to just dominate weaker targets. You are the threat. It's all eyes on you. Mr. Anderson, this is the sound of inevitability. The E75 can't do damage quickly, but it does it reliably. You have the fortitude to fight for the long haul, and the damage adds up. The enemy can't ignore you, but it is damn hard for them to hurt you, and this gives you the time you need to do the work. Make sure that you are in the thick of it, but also make sure that you are controlling the engagement. When the enemy swarms, the only defense is a good offense, and in those situations you just do not have the short-term damage output needed to deal with it. So control the engagement, keep the fight linear. Make sure to always prioritize targets and take out the biggest threats first, because the E75 can ignore a lot of lower tiered stuff. When fully upgraded, the E75 is a beast, a behemoth that strides the battlefield. The perfect combination of threat and endurance, the best balanced Tier 9.